Hello and welcome to Bastionland Broadcasting, where tonight we are back to looking through other people's RPGs. And tonight we're looking through a game that's currently on Kickstarter. I'll get my usual disclaimer out of the way that I've not received anything for this. In fact, the document I'm looking through tonight, I think, is just one that's freely available. It's just the demo version. But I spotted DOOMSONG a while ago now. I think it was like a couple of months ago. One of the creators linked it in a Discord server I was in, sort of like a preview version, and I was really sort of drawn in by it. And to be honest, I'd not heard of it before that point, so it kind of took me by surprise. So I thought this would be an interesting one to look through. It is currently on Kickstarter. You can go and check that out, but I'm going to be looking through it now and just seeing what's cool and what we think of it. So let's get straight to it. So DOOMSONG, I should say, this is by Caesar Inc., which is this team here. Morgan Finley, Moritz Krebs, Jack Caesar, Chris Caesar, Tim Gray. I'm not sure how many of those people are actually affiliated with Caesar Inc., but that is the team on this game. And it's a good sign when a game starts with actual sheet music. I've not yet taken this down to the piano and tried it out, but my sight reading was always terrible. So that's not going to be something I'm rushing to do. So, DOOMSONG. It's a dark fantasy role-playing game, which, as I say it, I can feel myself getting bored, because this is something that we've seen a lot lately. I say this as somebody who has a dark fantasy game currently in development. But there are a few things in here that really kind of stood out from the crowd for me and made me think it looked interesting. So yeah, it's a medieval horror in a realm just askew enough from reality to impart a sense of the unknown. Players join the Gravediggers Guild, an organisation that sends its members into the most forlorn places of the world. It reminds me a little bit, in terms of the setting, of Best Left Buried by Soul Muppet Publishing, if you've seen that one, but very kind of different mechanically. So yeah, dark, horrific, medieval world. Let's go. So what do you need? You need some dice. We know about all this. The Doom coin is one of the really interesting things. You need a single weighty coin, something full of ominous foreboding. I really go back and forth on like how much I like, or rather how much I dislike, sort of extra materials that you need at the table other than dice and pen and paper. My games, I tend to just plan that you can do it with dice and paper, but if a game has lots of counters and tokens and like proprietary dice, it does sometimes put me off. But here, it's because it's just this one coin, and because it's used in a way that we'll get to it, but I think it's used in a way that feels very central to the game. And if you don't have the fancy Doom coin that they're doing on the Kickstarter, which I think is actually being legitimately cursed, if you don't have that actual cursed coin, you can use a coin. You know, it feels like it's one of those things where I can't get grumpy about being asked to have a coin. Although I say that, it's much less. I do find myself without coins very regularly these days. So, what I thought we could do, because one of the first things that jumps out at me about this is we're going to make a character, because the character creation stuff seems really cool and interesting. The other thing is, I think this page leapt out at me when I was reading through it, because a lot is made about, and maybe this is something that is less common nowadays, but certainly in the old person heyday of Google Plus, you know, the golden age that probably didn't really happen in the way that people remember it, in that mythical time, it felt like there was a very clear divide between OSR games and story games, sort of headed up by Powered by the Apocalypse games. And at the time, there were lots of people. The person I remember that wrote a really interesting blog series about this. It was Brendan S., who did stuff like Wonder and Wickedness and writes at Necropraxis. Brendan wrote this blog post about sort of looking through Apocalypse World and seeing like the similarities with OSR style play. And this is something that kept coming back, is there is a lot of similarity between this kind of like OSR, you know, how to run a game OSR style and how to run a game Apocalypse World style. There are places where they differ, but there's a lot of crossover. And I feel like this game really shows that crossover now, I think, is much more common to see that crossover occurring. And the thing that leapt at me here was you've got the conversation, where it talks about how the game is essentially a conversation, which is, when I think of that as being something that I really heard about in PBTA games. But then you've got rulings not rules, which is like the OSR like mantra, I guess. So it's really interesting and really, really nice, at the risk of sounding a bit twee. It's really nice to see these two things coexisting, because I remember a time when it felt like you couldn't put those two things together, but you can always keep them together. So we have a poem, which I'm not going to read because I don't want to actually summon a demon. We have some fantastic artwork throughout this book. As far as I'm aware, all of the art is by one person. Let me get the name right. Yes, Moritz Krebs is the artist, and I love that we have the same artist all the way through the book. It's something that obviously I've done with my books, but I think if you can do it this way, to me, it makes a huge difference to like giving a book like its own identity. So I always love to see this. So, character sheets, there's a separate thing about character sheets and folding over. I'm not that interested in that. What I'm interested in is creating characters. So you know what? Let's do it. Let's get Notepad up. So this is my Doomsong character, and they're going to be determined by a few things. It's essentially a life path system, right? So we're going to start with this life path. This path, which is origin, and then this will lead us to various other careers and, you know, parts of your life. And eventually you will reach the Gravediggers Guild, which is where you become an adventurer, for whatever that means in this world. And I really like this. I do like life path systems. I always worry about life path systems in a game that has got high lethality, because I feel like if you're going to do that, you need to have a quick method for creating a character so you can get players back in the game. But with this, I feel like you could, if I was running this game, I would probably just create a few. I like to create a few really bad characters to keep as backup characters, so that if one of the players loses their main character, I can hand them a random character ready to go just to get us through the session, and then they can always create a new one for next time. So I do like life path systems. I have been talking about Traveller a bit over the last few years, and I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with that particular life path system, but I do like it. It's something I've wanted to explore myself. I nearly went for something similar to that with Mythic Bastion, but it didn't quite fit, so it's something I would like to visit in the future. So let's do it. Let's make our character. So, first of all, let's make sure I'm not missing some absolute crucial thing. So we're going to get traits, we're going to get gears, we're going to get abilities, and we're going to get a heresy, potentially. Maybe not just yet. So, okay, let's do it. So our origin. Where did your story begin? And because we're in the demo, not all of these are available, but I'm assuming that when we actually get the full game, this will be a full D6 table. So let me find a D6. I have got a 2. So my origin is Wild Thing. You were born in the Weald and the untamed wilderness beyond civilization. Your early years were spent eking out an existence in harsh lands that despise humanity. Choose your birth name and record it on your character sheet, and add Borderborn as a trait. Let's do it. So we have the traits Borderborn. Our name is going to be I'm not good with. Is there not a random name table? I'm going to wait, because if there's not a random name table, I'm going to withdraw all of my praise that I have for this game, because if you're going to make me come up with a name, you have earned my disgust. But it's disgust at myself reflected back, so it's fine. Okay, so we have Borderborn as a trait. And we now move to the Borderborn path on page 17. So let's go. So this is page 17. So growing up beyond the border castles brought as much peculiar freedom as it did danger. Concepts like law and ownership were foreign to you, and folk expect you to be uncultured and unpredictable. So we're like a wild person, I guess. And what was the defining moment of your childhood? And let's roll d6. And this is what I like. I mentioned this in a... It feels like everything I'm saying today I'm bringing back to myself. It's going to be a very egotistical read-through of somebody else's game. But I wrote a blog post about this a couple of weeks ago called about opt-in creativity. And when I'm creating a character, sometimes when I see a question like this, a question like, what was the defining moment of your childhood? If you're asking me to come up with that cold and like on a plain sheet of paper, that like I can feel my heart going, like palpitations, not necessarily in a good way. And, you know, I can do it, but I would much rather have answers here. And, you know, that's the whole point behind, like, the way that careers worked in Electric Bastionland. So let's see what we get. We get 3. A secret route. During a childhood game, you discovered a covert way past the border castles. This provided endless entertainment in your youth, but when you became an adult, it offered new prospects. You may become a smuggler or gain the honest trait. Now, these traits do have, like... They're like partially freeform in that they'll just give you a benefit when it feels right, but some of them do have quite specific uses at the end of the book. I like the idea of being a smuggler. It sounds cool. So I don't think we gain the smuggler trait, do we? No, we don't get a trait. We just get to go over here. So if this didn't have an exit, then we can choose one of these paths here. So we could become a poacher or a waif. But because we decided to be a smuggler, I'm hoping that means we get something better. Yeah, this guy looks cool. There'll always be a need for the covert movement of goods past toll roads and border castles. So, oh, hang on, did I miss? Let me just check I didn't miss something. No, we didn't. Because when you get to these sort of paths, you get a choice here between 2 traits. So I can be a navigator or I can be light-footed. I think navigator weirdly sounds good. So what made me stop? What made me stop being a smuggler? 3. Espionage. A step up in the world only cost you the name of an old friend. You may become a spy or gain the compassionate trait. So if we decided to gain compassionate and say, no, we're not going to give up our friend, then I would instead have to choose to become a leecher or a merchant. I'm sorry, I'm going to betray my friend for a career. I'm going to betray the friend for a career of being a spy. I'm sorry. So, spy, we're right here. Those who sell secrets dangle between dignity and a knife in the back. So we can be literate or we can have sharp ears. Well, if we're a navigator, being literate also sounds pretty cool. I'm just trying to make like a cartographer class. This is what we're going for. What did we escape with? 4. Endurance. In your line of work, long life requires patience. You may become an aged gravedigger or gain the reckless trait. We'll become... we'll become an aged gravedigger. So here we go. So depending on when we like exit the life path system, I guess we choose one of we would end up in one of these, or I think there is just a standard. Yeah, there is just standard gravedigger. But we get to be an aged gravedigger. It's a really cool system. I really like that it has little bits of choice like that, but it also feels random enough that it has that traveler thing. Well, I guess traveler had choice as well, so it's got that balance between like chaos and like you've still got agency in the process. I can see questions in chat. I will get to them, but I'm going to finish making my character first. I cannot do 2 things at once. So what were my insights? Yeah, okay, what were my insights? 1. Knowledgeable. Gain either navigator, beastwise, literate, or mathematical. Well, we've already got navigator and literate. Beastwise, mathematical would be... Yeah, let's do it. It fits what we've got going on. No, we've got navigator already. Mathematical. And what did this knowledge cost you? 1. Decrepitude. Oh no. Roll twice more on this table, ignoring any further results of 1. So I get a 3 and a 4. Half blind and half deaf. Great, cool. Half blind, half deaf. Wow. Okay, so we really are old, I guess. And now we go to the Gravedigger, which is like all roads lead to the Gravedigger, basically. I think this is how you end up with like this is always going to be your final step on your path. So reflect upon the life you have lived. Choose one of your traits and underline it. Listen, I can't underline things in Notepad. This game is not Notepad friendly. Underline it to mark it as defining trait. This will give you a bonus on checks involving that trait. So what's our best thing? Could I underline half blind or half deaf? But no, because I guess the benefit of being half blind would be like improved hearing. But I guess this just means like I could say that my sense of smell is really strong. I think navigator is going to be my like super skill. Or I feel like this character's not not destined to make it much longer. And then you choose whether you taught to fight or filled you with not. Yeah, I'm not a fighter, so I'm going to go for knowledge is our greatest weapon. 3. You gain the fable ability. Add a lantern, rope, and walking stick to gear. So, abilities. We get fable, and for gear, we get the old man kit. Lantern, rope, walking stick. So, you know, it's a cool character we've got there. Now, hang on, let's just look at this. So, the given name, you now get a different name. You get a chosen name as well. So listen, are you telling me that this game is asking me to come up with 2 names and there's no name? There better be a name list in here. I'm going to quickly skim through. I'm not seeing one. Listen. I mean, the benefit that this is an unpaid read-through is I can be brutally honest. And I think the creators of this game, when I did this review, they sent me a very sinister-looking Post-it note that they'd stuck on their wall saying that they owe me a favour, which made me sound like some kind of crime syndicate. The favour can be that we can get some random names in here, please, because there's people like me who are no good at coming up with names on the spot. So, name. The name list is going to be in there. I'm confident. I'm confident that it's going to be in there before it goes to print. I'm going to use every bit of my limited influence that I can to get that to happen. Okay, so you then have your defense score. Defense is kind of like a resource. It's not quite like HP. It's like a resource that you use to parry and block and dodge in the combat system. We'll get to the combat as we go. Toughness, again, is kind of like damage reduction kind of thing, but not quite. The combat system is really interesting that it doesn't feel that much like anything I've seen before. You get a badge marking you as a member of the Gravediggers Guild, as well as a long-handled, serviceable spade. That's nice. I like the spade. We need a D100 spades table in here for sure. So that's it. That's our character. That's what we get. So we're going to move on to the rules, but I think we've got a pretty nice character there, and I'm looking forward to hearing about what these abilities and traits do. I have managed to lose my character sheet, which I will fine, surely. Okay. Checks. So checks are at the heart of the DOOMSONG system. Players will perform them both in and out of combat. It's pretty much what you would expect from a check system. I'm not going to go through it too much. You've got like a standard list of like modifiers. You're generally aiming for a 5, and you're generally adding a point for like useful things that you have. One of the things that's cool is it has like it has a version of the advantage disadvantage mechanic where you roll 2 dice and either keep the higher or lower of the 2. But instead of just being advantage disadvantage, it's whether it's a focused check or a hasty check, which I like because it immediately makes you think a bit more about like, well, are the players being hasty in this action, in which case you can apply this effect, or have they got time to stop and focus, in which case you apply this effect. And generally, if you get over the target number, it's a success. If you get equal, it's success with a cost, and if you get under, it's failure with a cost. And then you get the Doom coin, which we'll get to, which I think is really fun. There's opposed checks. I'm not going to go too deep into like the system itself because I think the system sounds fine, and I don't mean that as like faint praise. But what I mean is there's other bits of the system I want to talk about a bit more. The Doom coin. Let's get on to the Doom coin. So normally when you roll, there's like 5 different results. So like I said, if our target number is 5, if we roll 1, 2, 3, or 4, it's going to be a failure with a cost. If we roll a 5, it's going to be success with a cost. If we get a 6, it's going to be a success. And you might think critical success, critical fail. You might think that comes on a natural 1 or natural 6. Well, it doesn't. Not in this system. In this system, you only get to these critical results by invoking the Doom the Doom coin, sorry. And the way this works is, after you've rolled a check, if you like, you can take the Doom coin and flip it. I think heads is good, is it? This is the one bit I haven't internalized. Oh, there's the crest and the skull. So I guess skull is heads and the crest is tails on most sort of real world coins. Oh, you know what? It even has the symbols here. So if you get the crest, which is the good result, you shift the result 1 step in a positive direction. So if you had a success with a cost, you could flip the Doom coin, and if you get the crest, it would just be a straight success. If you get the skull, it would be failure with cost. And then obviously this is how you get to those extreme results. So if you rolled a success, you can flip that coin and you've got a 50-50 chance of either making it a critical success or downgrading it to a success with a cost. And the time when I think it's really going to come in, I'd be really interested to know about, in playtesting, how often people flip the coin, because I feel like I would want to flip the coin all the time. And I think there is some mechanic to do with passing the coin around, but I feel like I would always want to flip it when I get a failure, because the idea that you've got a 50% chance to just bump it up to a success, I think that would be very tempting to do a lot of the time. So after you've used the Doom coin, the downside is you have to keep the Doom coin. So you're now doomed. And if you're doomed, the GM can basically make you flip the coin. And this is this is the thing that really made me, I don't know, I really like it because it does create a little bit of an antagonistic thing between the players and the GM. But I think because it's rooted in the structure of this minigame with the coin, and I think because the coin is going to be so fun that I think people will be kind of glad to flip the coin even when it's going to risk their character, I don't think it's going to cause any ill feeling that the GM will occasionally just say, oh, you're cursed and you failed, flip the coin to see if you get a critical failure. Because it might end up, it's 50-50, it could go in your favour. I think it's a really, really clever mechanic. I've seen similar things before where you've got like the option to push a die roll to try and like to take a further risk to improve it. I know that a lot of the Free League games do that. Forbidden Lands is the one I'm familiar with. I think the Alien system has something similar. But I think the simplicity of it being a 50-50 shot with this coin and the physicality of passing this coin around is really fun. And it's the kind of thing that I'm almost like, would I just like transplant that over to other systems if I wanted to try that out? I think it's really fun. Okay, fine. Oh, and you must flip the coin if the check is daunting or trivial. So let's have a look. So the difficulty is so high that a roll of 6 would still not reach it. A check is considered daunting. Similarly, if the difficulty is equal or below the total modifiers, the check is considered trivial. So it was like automatically pass or automatically fail. Okay. So if your roll is essentially irrelevant because you're always going to pass or you're always going to fail, then you still have to flip the coin. So there's always uncertainty. That's cool. Okay, and then we've got some special checks. And then we've got attacks. So I'm not going to dig too deep into the combat system, like every single bit of it. But essentially your traits are going to modify this. And your sort of margin of success over the defender determines what the actual effect of the combat of the attack is. And I like that it's very like visceral. Like it's like the critical hit table or the wound table in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay or the scars table in Electric Bastionland. I like that you're getting these very specific things of like a deep wound or a wound to the leg. But it seems like it wouldn't slow it down too much, because often with these systems where you're like rolling to hit and then roll for location, it's a bit much for me, but this feels like it will be quite straightforward. Okay, and then we have these, what are they called? Special? I forget what these are called. They're special types of checks. And this is, again, another really interesting thing, because a lot of this game, especially in how it's presented, has a kind of OSR feel, and it says, like, rulings, not rules, and all this stuff. But then the way these tests are laid out really reminded me of, like, Apocalypse World moves, where you've got, like, a very specific type of roll that follows the same system, but has, like, clearly laid out results for success, failure, and partial. So these are things like commune, first aid, judge, so trying to determine the motives of another creature, knock someone back, knock someone down, recover, resist death, resist fear. So some of them do also function kind of like saves, in that they're usually used in like a reactive kind of way. Retreating. So let's use retreat as an example, because I think retreat is always an interesting one to see how a game handles it, and I've not actually looked at this one. So retreat is used when characters are trying to flee. If multiple characters are fleeing at the same time, choose a leader and roll once on the check. Great. So you increase the difficulty by 1 for each dangerous opponent within short range of a retreating character, and decrease by 2 if there is a way to break the enemy's line of sight during the retreat. Okay. If you have any of these traits, they'll give you like a +1, or sometimes a +3. I think if it doesn't say, then we can probably assume it's a +1. And then you roll and you get this, you find out where your result is. So if we failed, we get a costly escape. So one enemy can move and make a free action. If they injure you, they cannot retreat. All of the fleeing characters can choose whether to escape or stay for another round. And this, again, immediately I'm like, well, would you want to flip the coin to risk being cut off, meaning you can't escape and every enemy can move and make a free action? Equal means you rout. The characters make their escape in a disorderly fashion. If they enter combat again during the next minute, they are surprised. So you get away, but if you get away and then get into combat, it's not good. Withdraw means you're fine, and feint means you get away and you also shake them off. yeah, it's pretty solid. I like it. I've got some great artwork. How to resolve out of combat attacks, which is a thing that can be a problem with these more kind of involved combat systems. So it's good to see that. And then we have like a nice infographic here to help out with. Infographic is probably not the right word. Flowchart, I guess, for how combat works. And then we have this whole thing to do with action dice. So, essentially, at the start of their turn, characters will get a number of action dice. I think it's 2. Let me double check. So yeah, each player gains 2 action dice. And the GM gains 1 action dice for each NPC. And then, before any of the actions are resolved, you set your actions using these dice. So I could say, well, I'm going to set mine as a 2 and a 5. And then the GM will do the same for all the monsters, and the other players will all do the same. And then you will work through each number one at a time. So first, everyone who placed a 1, whether they're a player or an NPC, will act. And everyone that placed a 2 will act, and everyone that placed a 3 will act. So obviously, this heavy attack that I've set up is not going to happen until most of the other characters have gone. But this dash is going to happen, quite early on. And I would love to try this out, but in principle, I think it sounds really cool because it has some of that feel of, in some versions of especially in old versions of D&D, sometimes the guidance was to say sort of well, everyone needs to declare what they're doing and set it in stone, and then we resolve it all. So you don't get to react to what's happening in that turn because the theory is that it's all happening at the same time. And that makes sense in the fiction, but when you get to the reality of the table, I think that can sometimes add a bit of bookkeeping where you've got to remember who's doing what. And sometimes when it does get to your turn and your action is no longer relevant, like if I say I'm attacking that guy and then another player takes that opponent out before it's my turn, if my turn is then wasted, it makes sense, but it's not very fun to just end up missing a turn. So here, there's still a little bit of maneuverability. You're just setting the number. You don't have to commit. You've usually got a choice of 2 actions to actually do on that turn. And the interesting thing is when we get to monsters have their own set of actions, which is really cool. So here we go. So the lace worker is this horrible spider thing. And they have their own actions. And I love this. I really like monsters that have their own specific set of moves and sort of act very differently to the player characters. So, he has an attack on die number 1, which the player characters, all they can do on sort of phase 1, I guess, all they can do is aid an ally or draw a weapon. So if you're fighting this spider, you know that the spider can hit you first if they want to. It's really cool. It's a really cool little system. So we've got some notes about equipment, weapons. It's kind of like a tag-based system, which is kind of straightforward, as you would expect. Armor as well. So actually, what's interesting is the equipment list here is just kind of, it's pitched as example equipment. This isn't the equipment list. It's just, here are some combinations of properties and the weapons that they might be. So you can always choose to make your own weapons. And same with the armor here. You're choosing a combination and that will give you the combination of properties that you choose, and whether it's light, medium, or heavy, I think, that will determine how the armor behaves. But it's not necessarily it's not like chainmail is the only option for this set of properties, if that makes sense. Conditions are kind of like traits. We'll get to them actually when we get to them. these are our traits. So like I said, most of them are self-explanatory. But there are some examples in here, and some of them are a little bit more specific than you might think. So our character, where did I... Bear with me. No, we're going to switch back, and I need to find my... I need to find my character because I've lost them. You know what? They are lost to time. No, my character is gone. My character has vanished. This is, I guess, you could argue that this is the downside of using Notepad for my character sheet, and I should use something a bit more robust. But I was led to believe Notepad wouldn't let me down, and Notepad has let me down, so I will be uninstalling it from this computer after this read through. So I can remember what our traits were. We were half blind. Hinders checks based on sight. That feels like a lot, because a lot of my we had like navigation and literacy were our other two skills. So the fact that they're going to be hindered if they rely on sight is kind of bad. Half deaf, hinders checks based on hearing. Right, okay. Mathematical. So studying and gambling. So I knew it. I thought mathematics is not going to be a useful skill, but if it works for gambling, that's great. Literacy, you can read and write. Navigator was the other one. Tracking, camp making, and maps. So yeah, the fact that it sort of has some survival uses is good to know. And then we had, was it like Borderborn? Yeah, interacting with folk beyond civilization and grass. So if we're talking to other people from outside civilization like us, we get an advantage. Abilities, we had Fable. Once per creature, you may choose to recall a fable containing useful information. Flip the Doom coin, you are now doomed. If you flip a crest, you remember a story with a useful piece of information about the creature, as decided by the GM. I like that. If you flip a skull, you learn something useful but are doomed for the rest of the session. You may not use this ability again. So again, this is like the opt-in creativity thing where as a GM, I'm always happy to come up with stuff on the fly, but as a player, sometimes with this kind of thing where I get a useful bit of information, I kind of want the GM to tell me it rather than have to think of it myself. And I know this varies with people, and it varies depending on what my mood is like. But I do like games that have that little bit of a delineation between the GM and the players in terms of how much creativity is compulsory. Because I think as a GM, it's always going to be compulsory that you've got to be creative on the night. As a player, there is going to be some creativity that's expected. But if it becomes too much, sometimes it becomes a bit... it's not necessarily what I want out of being a player in a game like this. I did say I'd go and look at the chat, which I had forgotten about. Temporary asks, how similar and different is Doomsong compared to Mortborg? I think they're very different. I think, other than the fact that you've got this kind of dark, apocalyptic tone, they feel very, very different to me. Mechanically, Mortborg is much more similar to something like Into the Odd. Whereas this does have more of that kind of... It's got a little bit more... Slightly more playful mechanics, I guess, in that the rules are kind of fun in themselves. Rather than just being like... I think the rules in Mortborg are kind of there to just get out of the way as much as possible. Whereas here, the rules have a bit more presence. Which isn't a bad thing. It depends on what you're looking for out of your game. Like here, I think the presence of those... The Doom coin and that success sort of ladder, if you like, and the way that combat works with the action dice, it feels more involved mechanically, but in a way that I really think could be fun. So yeah, that we had that ability, which is nice. It's a good shark. It's a good shark guy. Then we have occult abilities. I guess, could we have got these in character creation, or do they come later on? So we gain abilities from one of the traitor gods. So are these the traitor gods? Let's find out. Yeah, the 12 traitor gods included in this demo are Chance, Feast, Frenzy, Honor, Hope, Justice, Languor, Oblivion, Panic, Perception, Rot, and Toil. So yeah, it's like little spell lists. So if we gain occult abilities because we swear to the heretical god of Feast, we get a familiar who could be a crow, a fly swarm, or a boar. Cost, you must feed the hungry. And then I guess we can level up these abilities. So you may eat and digest anything you can swallow and never get ill from it. This is a great ability. I've used this one before. It's somehow a really fun ability to have. You're immune to ingested poisons, and you can regurgitate anything you have swallowed. That's great. And you can eat unendingly, even sharp or impossible items. If you spend 10 minutes gorging, treat all injuries. That's good. That's a good set of abilities there. And then you also have Bounty, which is... yeah, any meal you share can feed up to 10 people. Any drinkable liquid you pour never runs out. So this is the decanter of endless wine, I guess, or even a decanter of endless water. That's a wild thing to get so early on. Whenever someone eats food you're given them, you may choose to have them choke on it. They will die in a minute unless you are killed or decide to stop the effect. That's brutal. I like it. So yeah, we've got 12 of these in the demo. I'm guessing from the way it's phrased, there's going to be more in the final book. And then we have, so from what I gather, Lord Have Mercy on Us is a separate book, and that's kind of the adventure side of things, and Doomsong is the rule set, I suppose. And we have a section from that here. I'm not going to go too deep into it because it's an adventure, but we will have a little look through. We get a nice introduction. This is a very cool way to do it because I've said before that I am so easily put off an adventure if it starts with a big paragraph of text, even if it's the best writing in the world. If it opens with a big paragraph of flavor text that I have to read, I find it quite hard to get through. But this is great for someone like me. We have a nice map. We are here. And some guidance for how to run it. And again, we're going to skip through this a little bit, but we have some caverns, some castle grounds, various floors. We have residents of the castle. The Lice Mother, who again has her own like special actions that she can do with the action dice, which is really fun. You can do like some nice like boss monster type stuff, I guess. Troizel and Cressid. Who are these two? The Gardener, and again they all have their own moves. It's really cool. The Unquiet Dead. And an index. So this is Doomsong. So like I say, it comes with a core book and an adventure. And that is that. So as I've said, this is not a paid review or anything like that. I just thought it looked cool. It went live on Kickstarter a few days ago, I think. So go and check it out. And yeah, that's Doomsong. I think it looks really cool. Aside from anything else, I think that Doomcoin mechanic is really cool. I think the combat sounds really cool. I would like to run it, but I would really love to play in this. And it feels like it's just got some really fun tools for the player. The kind of thing that I like. The kind of like this, the idea that you can push your luck with that Doomcoin, and the way that combat works sounds tactical and a little bit restrictive, almost in a good way, without being a load of bookkeeping. So that's Doomsong. As always, you can keep up to date with everything I do by going to bastionland.com. You can support the stream by going to patreon.com/bastionland. And if you saw the trailer at the start of this stream for Mythic Bastionland, then maybe you would like one more trailer to see us off for the night. Thank you again to Caesar Inc. for providing this PDF, but I do think that this is actually something that anyone can go and download. So until next time, goodbye for now.